Picture this, two brothers in a dusty bicycle shop, tinkering away, until suddenly, out of nowhere, they literally invent the flying machine, right? Well, history is rarely that neat and tidy. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive into the true DNA of the airplane. We're going to bust the widely held myth that the Wright brothers basically invented aviation from absolute scratch, and trace the incredible, century-long engineering evolution that actually made that famous day at Kitty Hawk possible.
So, this brilliant history raises a really surprising question that we need to answer today. If the Wright brothers didn't invent the airplane from scratch, who did? Who actually conceptualized the modern flying machine and put the very first pieces of this massive aerodynamic puzzle together? To find out, we're going to have to go back a lot further in time than you might think.
Section 1. The Wright Brothers Myth.
Now make no mistake, the iconic 1903 Wright Flyer was an absolutely momentous milestone. On December 17th, Orville Wright lay prone on that bottom wing, staring down a freezing wind, and achieved the first genuine powered flight of a heavier-than-air machine. It was just 12 seconds of erratic, bumpy flight, but it finally fulfilled the dreams of centuries. It rightfully earned the Wrights their spot as history's premier aeronautical engineers. But, as we'll see, they didn't invent the airplane. They represented the brilliant fruition of decades of prior research.
Actually, it's pretty incredible to think about just how close the Wright brothers were to giving up entirely. Just 2 years before their ultimate success in 1901, a completely despairing Wilbur Wright made this stunning proclamation to his brother. He said, "Nobody will fly for 1,000 years." It really highlights just how unbelievably difficult the engineering challenge of flight truly was. And to understand why it was so hard, we really need to look at what early thinkers were getting completely wrong.
Section 2. Flapping wings in hot air.
For literally centuries, brilliant thinkers, including Leonardo da Vinci, sketched these intricate machines called ornithopters. Da Vinci actually made over 500 sketches dealing with flight back in the late 1400s. The whole idea was to just copy nature, to use flapping wings to provide both lift and propulsion at the exact same time, exactly like a bird does. But mathematically and mechanically, this approach was just doomed to fail. Human muscle power simply isn't enough, and trying to combine lift and thrust into a single complex flapping mechanism was a total engineering dead end.
We did manage to briefly escape gravity a bit later, in 1783. That's when the Montgolfier brothers realized the sheer lifting power of hot air. They managed to send the balloon carrying human passengers on this majestic 25-minute voyage across Paris. It was amazing, the first time humans were actually sustained in the air. But there was a major catch.
The core problem early aviation faced really comes down to this comparison. On one hand, you had ornithopters, which were a mechanical dead end because they tried to do way too much at once. And on the other hand, you had balloons. Sure, they provided lift, but they offered absolutely zero forward propulsion or true aerodynamic flight. You basically just drifted wherever the wind took you. Neither of these approaches actually contributed to the technical advancement of heavier-than-air flight. What engineers desperately needed was a completely new aerodynamic paradigm.
Section 3. The true inventor of flight.
That massive paradigm shift finally came, but not in 1903. It happened way back in 1799, thanks to a brilliant English baronet named Sir George Cayley. Cayley's absolute genius was conceptually separating the mechanism of lift from the mechanism of propulsion. Instead of flapping wings trying to do both jobs, he envisioned a fixed wing to generate lift and a totally separate mechanism to push the craft forward. He actually engraved this revolutionary fixed-wing airplane design onto a tiny silver disc, preserving it for history. The front shows the fixed wing and tail, and the back literally diagrams the aerodynamic forces of lift and drag. With this one disc, he effectively became the true father of aviation.
So, George Cayley is the parent of modern aviation. The basic configuration of every single commercial jet you fly in today traces its engineering lineage right back to him. And Cayley was just a phenomenal intellect all around. Not only did he invent the airplane configuration, he also invented the Caterpillar tractor, which is the precursor to all modern tracked vehicles. He co-founded the British Association for the Advancement of Science, and in 1809, he published history's very first theoretical aerodynamics treatise.
Section 4. Cayley's first gliders.
Now, Cayley wasn't just a theorist, drawing pictures on silver discs. He spent the next decade rigorously testing his groundbreaking aerodynamic concepts in the real world. In 1804, he built a whirling arm apparatus to physically test different wing shapes, or airfoils, and measure the aerodynamic forces acting on them. He'd attach a wing to the end of this arm and spin it rapidly to generate airflow. By doing this, he essentially created the 19th century precursor to the wind tunnel, replacing pure guesswork with actual, measurable physics.
That exact same year, applying everything he just learned, he built and flew a model glider. Historians recognize this simple wooden model as the very first modern configuration airplane in history. It features a fixed main wing in the front, alongside adjustable horizontal and vertical tails in the back for stability. Think about that. He was successfully flying this in 1804. That is a full century before Kitty Hawk.
Fast forward to 1852. Cayley is now 79 years old, and he publishes a wildly detailed design for a large human-carrying glider. Just look at the features he included: a main wing for lift, a cruciform tail for stability, actual pilot controls, and a three-wheel undercarriage. This combination was so advanced, it basically wouldn't be seen again in a complete working package until the Wright brothers. In 1853, he even built a version of this and sent his absolutely terrified coachman on a brief, uncontrolled glide across a valley.
Section 5. The Era of Hype. Despite Cayley's incredible foundational successes, his work largely faded into obscurity after his death. This kicked off an era in the mid to late 19th century that was mostly characterized by disjointed experiments and massive publicity stunts. In 1843, William Samuel Henson capitalized on Cayley's ideas to design the aerial steam carriage. Now let's be clear, this massive machine never actually flew. It was way too heavy. But it became a global sensation thanks to incredible marketing and widespread engravings. Even though it didn't fly, it permanently cemented Cayley's fixed-wing concept into the minds of the public and future inventors.
Henson's friend John Stringfellow kept that momentum going by creating a steam-powered model triplane in 1868. While it also wasn't truly successful at flying, this exact model heavily influenced later pioneers. In fact, historians point out that these very illustrations influenced the Wright brothers' eventual use of superimposed wings, stacking wings on top of each other to create what we now call a biplane or triplane.
Section 6. Paving the Way for 1903.
As the 19th century drew to a close, a few brave inventors did start to achieve brief, powered hops off the ground. But they were still missing huge pieces of the aerodynamic puzzle. Machines like Felix du Tempel's in 1874 and Alexander Mosahiski's steam-powered aircraft in 1884 actually managed to get off the ground. But here's the catch. They did it by accelerating down inclined ramps. They were achieving assisted takeoffs, essentially ballistic leaps, rather than true, sustained flight. They'd shoot off a ramp, catch a little bit of air, and quickly crash back down.
Those brief, ramp-assisted hops are exactly why aviation historians use a very strict set of criteria to define true powered flight. To really claim the invention of the flying machine, it has to be sustained freely. It has to move horizontally or rise, maintain its airspeed, be completely self-propelled without ramp momentum, and, crucially, be kept in total equilibrium by a pilot. This was the incredibly high bar that the Wright brothers finally cleared in 1903.
When you lay it all out on a timeline, you finally see the true DNA of the airplane. The Wright brothers didn't invent flight in a vacuum. They didn't just wake up one day and conjure the airplane from thin air. Instead, they provided the ultimate brilliant fruition of a century of aeronautical evolution. An evolution sparked way back in 1799 by the true father of aviation, Sir George Cayley, and kept alive through decades of hype, mechanical failures, and ballistic hops.
It's genuinely incredible to realize that the true conceptual inventor of aviation lived a full century before Kitty Hawk. His ideas just sat there, waiting for the technology and the brilliant engineering of the Wright brothers to finally catch up. Which leaves you wondering, as we wrap up today's explainer, looking around at the modern world we live in today, what other revolutionary ideas and forgotten blueprints are just hiding in history, waiting to be rediscovered?